you may not even know it's there. It's in the air. And every year, people who work in it are killed or lose work due to illness. It's toxic air. It's hazardous atmospheres. To protect themselves, millions of people wear respirators where they work. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has rules about hazardous atmospheres to protect you at work. One such regulation is the Respiratory Protection Standard, which was updated and applied to general industry, construction, shipyard, longshoring, and marine terminal workplaces. This program covers parts of the revised Respiratory Protection Standard, including your employer's written respiratory protection program and program administrator, respirator selection, medical evaluation and fit testing, proper use and limitations, emergency use, inspection, seal check, disinfecting, and storage. If the atmosphere where you work contains hazardous contaminants or is oxygen deficient, your employer tries to protect you by using engineering controls. When engineering controls are being installed, or if these controls are not feasible, you'll receive the appropriate respirator to protect you from the atmosphere. Your employer's written procedures and worksite-specific plan are designed to protect employees working in the hazardous atmosphere. The plan describes the hazard, respirator selection, and how you use a respirator. This written program and plan are updated as necessary to reflect changes affecting respirator use. Your employer selects a respiratory protection program administrator who implements the program and conducts evaluations of program effectiveness. The type of hazards you and your coworkers are exposed to on the job drives your employer's respirator selection process. Basically, atmospheric hazards are oxygen deficiency and contaminants in the ambient air you breathe. Atmospheres that contain less than 19.5% oxygen are considered immediately dangerous to life or health, IDLH. An atmosphere is considered IDLH if it could cause an immediate threat to life, irreversible adverse health effects, or would impair your ability to escape. In IDLH atmospheres, only certain full-face piece, pressure-demand, atmosphere-supplying respirators may be used. These respirators supply breathing air from a source other than ambient air. The supplied air respirator receives breathing air through an air line attached to a source not worn by the user, such as a compressed air tank or compressor. An airline compressor provides an unlimited supply of air, but must be protected from hose cutting or crimping, as well as loss of electrical power to the compressor. If you wear a supplied air respirator in an IDLH atmosphere, it must have an escape unit in case of air loss. The self-contained breathing apparatus provides breathing air from tanks you carry. SCBA tanks are usually rated in half hours, so to work in a known IDLH atmosphere, the tank must provide at least 30 minutes of breathable air. In non-IDLH atmospheres, air purifying respirators may provide adequate protection. These respirators are equipped with an air purifying filter, cartridge, or canister that removes specific air contaminants by passing ambient air through the air purifying element. Always use the proper purifying element for the hazard you face. You'll know when to change out a cartridge or canister if your respirator has a NIOSH-certified end-of-service life indicator, or from your employer's change-out schedule, which is part of the written respirator plan. Other criteria your employer may use to choose the right respirator for the job are worksite temperature, humidity, your mobility, the service life of the particular respirators, communication factors, and machinery movement. Once hazards are evaluated, the proper respirator is selected. All devices, as well as their replacement cartridges, must be NIOSH certified and used appropriately. Never substitute or mix respirator components, such as cartridges, valves, or gaskets. Or allow them to be substituted with parts made by another manufacturer not listed on certification documents. Be familiar with and follow equipment limitations. Your facility program outlines proper use of respirators. You'll learn how to prevent respirator seal leakage, how to ensure continued respirator effectiveness, and use of respirators in IDLH atmospheres. Most facilities require respirator wearers to be clean-shaven. When wearing a tight-fitting respirator, maintain a proper facepiece seal by keeping hair, even stubble, from between the respirator and your face, and from valve functions. Corrective lenses can also affect a tight-fitting facepiece seal. Contact lenses are permitted with respirators, or your employer may choose to mount corrective lenses inside the facepiece by using a special adapter. When respirator use is not required by results of the hazard evaluation, but you want to use a respirator, you are covered by voluntary use rules. An example of voluntary use is choosing to use a dust mask when performing dusty tasks such as sweeping or working outdoors during allergy season. Using a respirator on a voluntary basis, however, could pose health hazards for you. For that reason, your employer will see that you follow the manufacturer's instruction for respirator use, maintenance, cleaning, and care. You will be prevented from using the wrong respirator in a potentially hazardous atmosphere. Wearing a respirator may adversely affect some workers. That's why you'll have a medical evaluation to make sure you can tolerate the gear. This evaluation must be offered to anyone required to wear a respirator or who requests to wear one, except for filtering face pieces worn voluntarily. The evaluation takes place before fit testing and then periodically for as long as you wear a respirator on the job. A medical evaluation may or may not include a medical examination, but it will always involve filling out a medical questionnaire. Your employer and supervisor will not see your answers, but you can request the chance to discuss them with the medical professional selected by your employer. A physician or other licensed healthcare professional reviews your responses and may require follow-up to be sure that it is safe for you to wear a respirator. The healthcare professional who evaluates your questionnaire provides you and your employer with a written recommendation about your ability to use a respirator. The healthcare professional decides how often to reevaluate each employee based on initial evaluation, work stress, types of respirators, as well as other factors. Additional medical evaluations will be performed if you develop any medical signs or symptoms related to your ability to wear a respirator, or if your supervisor or respirator administrator deems it necessary. Reevaluation is also required if fit testing or other program evaluation activities suggest a need. In some cases, your employer will make a powered air purifying respirator, PAPR, available if the healthcare professional determines you can't safely wear a negative pressure respirator. After medical evaluation, you'll be fit tested to ensure your respirator provides a protective seal. Since facial shapes and sizes vary as much as individual comfort levels do, a good assortment of respirator face pieces is important. Your safety depends on a tight seal, and the more comfortable you are wearing your respirator, the more motivated you'll be to use it. Two basic types of fit testing may be used. In the qualitative fit test, the wearer decides whether the test agent is noticeable in the facepiece. In the quantitative fit test, a numerical measure is made to assess how much of the test agent enters the mask. Before you actually depend on your respirator for protection from a hazardous atmosphere, you must inspect it. Check your respirator function, tightness of connections, and condition of all its parts. Look for damage to the facepiece, head straps, valves, connecting tube, cartridges, canisters, filters, and any other parts. Next, see that the facepiece is pliable and not deteriorated. This inspection, plus inspection of breathing air tanks and compressors, must be made before each use. Before you enter a hazardous atmosphere, you must also perform a user seal check. The simple test helps you evaluate if the respirator is properly seated on your face and properly tightened. To perform a positive pressure check test, close off the exhalation valve and exhale gently into the facepiece. If there's a slight positive pressure, without signs of outward air leakage at the seal, the fit is good. For a negative pressure check, close off the inlet opening of the canister or cartridge by covering it with the palm of your hand or by replacing the filter seal. Inhale gently so the facepiece collapses slightly and hold your breath for 10 seconds. If the facepiece stays slightly collapsed and no inward air leakage is felt, the fit is good. Supplied breathing air must be at least grade D. Compressed air cylinders must be certified and analyzed by the compressed air supplier, as well as marked to show they meet DOT container rules. If your employer compresses air for breathing, purity requirements are based on both specifications and the way the air supports you as you work. For example, the air inlet must be located away from sources of contamination, like exhaust gases from nearby vehicles, or from the motor that powers the compressor itself. Breathing air compressors should have suitable inline air purifying sorbent beds and filters. Your employer must test compressed air for contamination as well as adequate oxygen content. To prevent incorrect cross-connections, breathing air couplings must not be compatible with couplings for non-respirable air, such as plant worksite air or nitrogen systems. Asphyxiating gases such as nitrogen may never be introduced into breathing air lines. If your employer purchases compressed breathing air, it must have a certificate of analysis from the supplier that the air meets purity requirements. Even when you take every precaution, there is always the chance that the unexpected will happen. You are protected by following safe working procedures. If your respiratory protection equipment fails, leave the hazardous atmosphere immediately. Never enter an IDLH atmosphere with only an escape respirator. The escape respirator is for use only in the case of emergency and must never be used for work. One standby or backup person should be present when you enter an IDLH atmosphere. This person should maintain communication with respirator users inside and take immediate emergency action when needed. 2 standby people are required in firefighting and emergency response situations. The 2-in, 2-out system allows the standbys to stay in contact with the pair inside, as well as monitor the environment. Depending on facility policy, you may be required to clean your own equipment. In this case, you will be provided with the proper training, supplies, and time to perform maintenance. Depending on your equipment, your employer may choose to follow the cleaning recommendations provided by the respirator manufacturer, or you may be trained in the following cleaning steps. First, remove filters, cartridges, or canisters. Disassemble the respirators by removing speaking diaphragms. Clean the docking port and regulator assemblies. Take caution to cap the regulator and not allow liquid inside. Clean hoses and any other components recommended by the manufacturer. Discard or repair all defective parts. You may only repair parts if you are qualified to do so. Wash parts in warm water, no warmer than 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with a mild detergent or with a cleaner that's recommended by the manufacturer. You may also use a stiff bristle brush on respirator parts to help remove dirt. Next, rinse components thoroughly in clean, warm water, again, no warmer than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Running water is preferred. Proper rinsing is vitally important. Detergents or disinfectants that dry on face pieces may irritate your skin, deteriorate rubber, or corrode metal parts. If the cleaner you use doesn't contain a disinfecting agent, immerse respirator parts for 2 minutes in an aqueous solution of iodine or another commercially available cleanser approved by the equipment manufacturer. After you rinse, drain all parts. Then hand dry with a clean, lint-free cloth or let them air dry. Reassemble the unit, replacing filters, cartridges, and canisters where necessary. Lastly, test the respirator to make sure all components work properly. Respirators are cleaned and disinfected as needed and prior to being transferred from one employee to another. Respirators used in fit testing or for emergency use must be cleaned and disinfected after each use so they're ready to use again anytime. Respirator storage is as important as proper cleaning. Store your respirator to protect it from damage, contamination, dust, sunlight, extreme temperatures, moisture, and chemicals. Pack or store your equipment to prevent facepiece and exhalation valve distortion. Emergency respirators are always stored in an accessible area with the storage location clearly labeled. Air and oxygen respirator cylinders must be inspected for pressure, which must be at least 90% of the manufacturer's recommended level. And a written inspection record, such as a tag, is required for each emergency use respirator. Your training will always be appropriate for your skill and language comprehension levels. And whenever possible, all respirator training will be coordinated with other training, such as hazard communication. You will be trained before you don a respirator and receive refresher training at least every year thereafter. The extent of your training depends on the workplace and how much responsibility and control you're given for your respirator. For example, a respirator technician assigned to clean, disinfect, store, maintain, and inspect all equipment should receive more training than a respirator user. You will be trained to understand why respirators are necessary, how respirator efficiency and protection can be affected by improper fit, usage, maintenance, and storage, selection, inspection, and donning of respirators, limitations and capabilities of respirators, emergency responses, and seal check procedures. All this knowledge should be measured by your employer through a combination of written or oral exams, interviews, and on-the-job observations. If you voluntarily wear a respirator when not required to do so, you require less training. Repeated or supplemental training for all workers should be conducted whenever your employer believes it's necessary, such as if someone uses a respirator incorrectly or if workplace changes occur. For certain employees, like SCBA wearers and emergency response workers, refresher training may be required more frequently than once a year. Your training is portable. Anyone previously trained doesn't need to be trained in a new workplace if he or she can demonstrate the knowledge and skills required. Still, refresher training for a newly assigned or hired person is required within 12 months of his or her previous training date. Your facility policy determines how often your respiratory program is evaluated. Workplace evaluations are conducted to ensure that your respirator protection program is being implemented as written and is up to date. Problems discovered during program evaluations should be corrected promptly. This program covered your employer's written respiratory protection plan, the program administrator, selection, medical evaluation, fit testing, proper use and limitations, emergency use, inspection, seal check, cleaning, and storage. Remember, your respirator is the only thing between you and a hazardous atmosphere. Complying with the information you just learned and will learn in hands-on training will help you and your coworkers stay safe on the job, today and tomorrow.